Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Nidoqueen deck for the 2006 format. Now, Nidoqueen was created by Jeremy Moran, Pablo Meza, and Adam Caporila in the 2005 format, and ultimately ended up winning the World Championships that year. Now, in 2006, Jeremy took the exact same. He took Nidoqueen, retooled the deck a little bit, and ended up with a third place finish at Worlds. Now, while Jeremy had a really good list at Worlds that year, I also feel like it was really teched out, and it also featured a Houndoom line, which is a little counterproductive to the strategy. And as players have gotten better about playing against Houndoom, it's a lot harder to catch people in that lock. So basically, my list is going to be a combination of Jeremy Moran's, my own testing experience, and a lot of the innovations James Arnold had with the deck in the RS to PK format. As far as an actual strategy of the deck, basically Nidoqueen is a non-EX, single prize attacker, fighting type, which is really good in this format, that hits for really good numbers. Secondary attacker on the deck is going to be Pidgeot. Basically, you're just trying to slam non-EX, hard hitters against your opponent's, ideally EX Pokemon, and coming up with favorable traits. We're going to use cards like Mr. Briney's Compassion and VS Secret to just cycle our attackers over and over again, and ultimately just come out ahead. So let's go ahead and just jump into the list here. We play a full 4-3-4 Nidoqueen line. Nidoran is pretty good here. Being able to grab a basic Pokemon, it's not outstanding, but for our stage 2, it's pretty good. Nidorina, we do play the thicker line here. This helps against decks like Rocklock, but it's also really good if we open Nidoran, get that turn 2 Nidorina, and then we're just able to start grabbing our evolutions. Now, we do play 4 copies of Nidoqueen. Once again, just really solid attacks. The body is nice in certain situations. Toxic for a single energy puts a lot of pressure on the opponent. And then Power Lariat hits for pretty decent damage in the later stages of the game. I went with a 3-1-3 Pidgeot line, and then 1 Pidgeot Delta. Now, it depends a lot on the games or the matchups whether or not you're going to use Pidgeot Delta, but essentially, if you have any Hoenn energy attached to Pidgeot Delta, your opponent can't use no Pokemon can use any powers excluding Hoenn's Pokemon. Now, this is great in this format. This shuts off opposing Pidgeots. It shuts off Blastoise EX, for example. Just basically any sort of relevant power gets shut off by this. In some matchups, this card is going to be absolutely huge and key to your strategy. Against other matchups like Ryags, for example, it's not going to do much of anything, and you're probably not even going to go for it. Now, I do play a single copy of Jirachi. This is my personal preference. I find I like that little added bit of consistency in the deck. We don't really play any sort of setup Pokemon or anything like that. So being able to have that Great Ball for that consistency out, in my opinion, I like. If you didn't want to play the Jirachi, you can play like a second Pidgeotto or 4th Great Ball. I think those are both great choices. It just... If you're not playing some sort of consistency option, you just are basically relying really heavily on your opening hand to be enough to sustain you to get to that first Pidgeot or start putting that early pressure on your opponent. 1 Hoenn's Magneton. Not only does this help us recycle our double rainbow energies, it also can help us pull surprise damage out. If our opponent thinks they have our damage figured out because of double rainbow energy, this will let us bounce it. And we can get that extra 10 damage off. Now, I'm also going to say it is also something we can get back with Pokemon Retriever. It helps us in certain matchups where if our energy lines get a little bit tight. Moving on to the supporters here, we play 4 Celios Network for consistency, 4 Steven's Advice, and then 3 Copycat. Typically, I found in this format, a lot of decks play with very large benches. So I prefer the 4 Stevens. You could very easily go like 3 Stevens, 4 Copycat. If you were feeling a little bit riskier, even you could go like 3 Stevens, 3 VS Seeker. I would probably max one of these and then leave the other at 3. You could also go 4-4-2. I think that's perfectly fine. Rocket's admin can be really strong in this deck because we do play the Pidgeot Delta, so we can shut off our opponent's Pidgeot and then admin them ideally to a lower hand size. Yeah, just you basically have, I think, 10 spots to play around with here, and I went with a 4-3-3 line. One, Mr. Briney's Compassion. I think you make a good argument for a second one in the deck. I just didn't have room. 4 Rare Candy. Obviously, we're playing 2 Stage 2s. Having being able to quickly get that to that first Pidgeot, getting to that Nidoqueen consistently, it's going to be huge. Now, we play 3 Great Ball in the deck as well to help search out our basics. 2 VS Seeker. Ideally, this is going to be to cycle the Briney's Compassion, but it's also great to grab another Admin, Copycat, Stevens, whatever we need in that situation. And then since Nidoqueen's damage is reliant on how many evolutions we have in play, in a long game, we could start running a little thin. That's why we've got Pokemon Retriever to throw a 5th Nidoqueen at our opponent, or we can use it in a quick situation to grab back like a single copy of Jirachi or a Pidgeot line if Pidgeot's really important in the matchup we're currently doing. Like Dragtrode, for example, a lot of times we'll send a Dark Dragonite up. Pidgeot's really good at attacking that. Couple of things to note in this. One of the things that I don't like is that you really don't... You want to play 4 Desert Ruins in this, but you really don't have room to. It's nice. Some matchups like LBS, for example, you'd really like it. You just really can't find room for it. The other thing is the deck does not play the Hold-On Engine. In theory, you could. The discards are pretty painful for Nidoqueen. There's not really a lot of resources you don't mind discarding. And if you did go with the Hold-On Engine, you'd have to go really low, like on your Copycat, your Stevens, and then your Great Ball. Typically, Nidoqueen is always played without the Hold-On Engine, but it is something you can test or try in the deck as well. Energy lineup, we go with 5 Grass. We want to make sure we can get those early Toxic off if we do get an early Nidoqueen. 4 Double Rainbow Energy. It works really well for a surprise, not a surprise, but a quick clutch or a Power Lariat. Also worth noting here that Pidgeot is a lightning type. That will come up in situations if you're, say, for example, going against an opposing Pidgeot. Rotating Claws can be a very useful attack. Ironically, in the mirror, it can be very strong as well. 4 Hold-On Energy. Obviously, we mainly play this just for the Pidgeot Delta, but it's actually really good with Nidoqueen if you have it on the same... if you have a Grass Energy on there too, or with Pidgeot, you can't be affected by any special conditions. Once again, in certain matchups, this can be incredibly strong. And then I do play 1 Scramble Energy. I always liked 1 Scramble in the deck. There's going to be situations where you find yourself behind on prizes, and it's great just to be able to send up a Nidoqueen and Power Lariat without actually having to attach 2 energy to it. Other than that, like I said, Nidoqueen is a very straightforward deck, but it's incredibly strong, very powerful, and it's a very good archetype in the 2006 format, and it creates for some pretty interesting matchups and dynamics. If you haven't played much Nidoqueen 2006, I really do recommend you try it. It's a really fun deck to play. Other than that, I hope to catch you in the next video.